And I don't see any logic here, and I'm a fairly logical person. It seems that some intelligent, creative people put into place a moderate protection of a valuable resource. My question to you as a commissioner, as you look to remove this, who will benefit from it? Obviously, in my perspective, I may be wrong, obviously not the people who depend on the clean water, on the ecotourism, on the protection of this natural resource. That's just, it doesn't, the pieces don't come together. So if you could tell me the logic behind the decision, perhaps it would make more sense.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The first assumption is there's going to be harm. When our ordinance was adopted in 2010, you've heard tonight, there was no protection for isolated wetlands. And so our ordinance definitely filled a hole. And there's some places where our ordinance, I believe, is more stringent. There's places where the state is more stringent. And so you're always going to have a little bit of overlap. What I keep hearing is these guys can't or won't do their job, DEP and the Water Management District. I don't believe that. This gentleman spent 30 years working for the Water Management District. I'm sorry, DEP. If he spent 30 years working and not doing the job and not protecting, and now he's drawing a retirement check from all the rest of us, shame on him. And I'm not accusing you of that, but I'm saying that I believe that the protections are in place. I believe that these folks are doing their job.
No.
You're not.
And things will just change.
I am answering the question because we all benefit if we strip away regulations that are not necessary. We all benefit from that. So the first question is there adequate protection or not? Do we allow the state to fill in isolated wetlands? Can someone come in and dredge and fill? Mr. Rudlow had a nice little speech. Can someone do that today? And is your department, are you guys going to stand up and just let them dredge and fill? I'm not calling for anyone to be allowed to do that. I'll stand out there with Jack and help him stop those bulldozers if they're doing it illegally. Trust me. I'm on tape, okay? I'm not afraid of that. I'm not here to damage any wetlands. And when people come and have the misconception that I don't understand how vital the wetlands are, I understand it just like you do. And it's important to me. I grew up here. This is my home. I didn't move here because I fell in love with this place and it's beautiful. This is my home where I grew up. This is where I'm raising my kids. So I love this just as much as everybody else. It's wrong to say that we're doing this because we're greedy, we've been bought out. That's wrong. It's wrong to say these folks are not doing their job. Our state, our governor is now standardizing rules. Our governor is now spending millions of dollars to restore mistakes of the past. Absolutely, there were mistakes in the past. There were mistakes in the past where this gentleman lives at Shell Point when they dredged and filled Shell Point. That was wrong. That was wrong. If we think that it's harmful to live in close proximity to the wetlands, this gentleman, I ask every one of you, if it's harmful, bulldoze your house and let's return it back to the wetlands. It's absolutely hypocritical to say that other people can't have what you have.
Ralph,
I'm telling you my opinion.
Ralph, one question.
Let me get some water, but yes, sir, shoot that.
Okay, let me answer one question.
So guys, our time is winding down. So we're going to work like this. I'm going to let you ask your question.
Why do we have to leave her? Why can't we stay here?
And I'm just trying to get some order to it. You have a question as well, right? You have a question as well?
No, I was just hoping you could kind of rain it on down.
Okay. Can I take this gentleman's orders? Is that okay?
The one question,
Let Ralph speak.
regardless of how good or bad the state people are, it takes a manpower to do it. They don't have the manpower.
Neither does he. Neither does he.
They have more. Wait a minute, let me ask you a question.
Excellent.
You're not going to ask a question.
And
With their shortage of manpower,
we haven't let Dr. Kessler speak, by the way, and we've let Commissioner Thomas have the floor for a few minutes.
Let him finish.
Last question is...
Let him ramble.
I have no problem with that. We can go past 8:30.
how,
Sit in your hole. It's the beauty. Keep on going.
no matter how dedicated the state people are, with the lack of manpower, they don't have the manpower to do it. They have how many counties in the Northwest District to cover? And you divide the people up.
Department covers 8.
They have much less manpower than the county does. How are they going to do it, no matter how they
have
try?
less manpower than the county does. Let's correct that. Mr. Lambu, you've said consistently that these folks only have 2 people between DEP and the Water Management District, 2 people that serve 8 counties, I believe was your quote. He said they serve 16. Well, we can find out tonight. You don't have to take it from me. It's
2 people for 16, that's worse.
I've got it in email that there's at least 11, and there's a bunch of other collateral.
11 people working full-time on wetlands?
Ask Mr. Turner how much he has. We need to start telling the truth. That's the first element.
Oh, I got to do, yeah.
Okay, let's hear from a member of our panel.
Okay, Tabitha has a-
Equal time. Tabitha?
Commissioner, with all due respect, you mentioned the state worker and he didn't do his job, he's collecting taxpayer dollars. The way I see it is that you get rid of this buffer zone, you're not doing your job because so many residents in this county have siphoned off FEMA, federal tax dollars. Now you're proposing to make this Wakulla County possible a permanent welfare state, constantly siphoning
I'm not
from the federal
proposing that.
government.
You might be proposing that, but I'm not. And
You get rid of
been
the
constantly
wetland
confusing
buffers,
wetlands
that's
with
exactly
flood
what's
all
gonna
night long.
happen.
All night long, you're
No, I have
confusing these
not let her
folks
finish.
with flood and
Wetlands contain water.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what you're proposing though, you know how many times this county has had FEMA, federal government, come down here to give aid to this county? What you're proposing is only going to increase that. Are you proud of that? Is that the tenure that you'd like to leave?
You are slanting it the wrong direction, because first of all, October 1st, when these new maps go into play, or I don't know if they've been delayed, but that's the last target that I heard, then Louis is going to have to check those maps. Louis is going to have to make sure people build above those flood zones. So the problems that you're noting are going to affect the properties that are already here, true enough, and are also going to affect them if there's ever damage. And if you have your home destroyed at Shell Point and you want to build it, you want to build it back exactly like you have it. You're going to have to lift it above that. St. Mark's has had a 13-foot increase in the base flood elevation. Some of this is correct and some of it is justified. Some of it is junk science. Some of it is a money grab where we're trying to pay all the claims that have happened up in New
You
Jersey.
should help people protect their property by continuing the buffer zone. Getting rid of it is going to put more properties at risk, and you know it.
I welcome your opinion, and I appreciate you coming here tonight.
That answers our
We're waiting for you to answer the question.
Who benefits?
Who benefits?
I thought I did answer that.
No.
Okay, well, let me say it again. Let me say it again.
No, say it again.
If there is no damage, if adequate protection is in place,
That's not the question.
if then there is no damage, then we all benefit by stripping away excessive regulation. We all.
Define
All right, everybody. This gentleman here has a question, please. We will not address shout-outs. We will only address people who raise their hand and try to do it respectfully.
I got a question on a call that needs to be asked.
This gentleman right here, please.
You say that the environment here, wetlands, you have $500,000 to spend on tourism to get people down here. And yet...
1 year, for just 1 year.
Yes, for 1 year.
Which is no anomaly. Normally it's 9 years.
Basically, the crown jewels of Wakulla County is its environment. And yet you say logically, we're going to get out of the business of protecting it.
That's because we're not going to harm it.
Let me finish, Ralph.
Yes, sir.
You said a minute ago, if the state has the funds, the ability, et cetera, to do it. You're putting everything for the crown jewels protection in somebody else's lap. You're taking the county out of it all. You're saying, we're not going to protect our crown jewels. We're going to rely on, wait, let me finish. We're going to rely on someone else. They may or may not do it. But you as a commissioner are saying you're taking yourself out of protecting what's really important to this county and relying on someone else. The logic of that makes no sense whatsoever.
If it's protected once, we don't need to protect it twice.
If you're saying if they do it,
I believe it is.
you're taking the crown jewels and saying we're not going to protect them, we're going to allow somebody else.
Hey, everybody, maybe Out of respect to Rachel, we can hold a town hall meeting with just
Why
me.
didn't you do that before you did away with the ordinance? Louis said a minute ago he didn't know the effect from flooding or insurance rates until he finished his study. You're rushing ahead before that and doing away with it. Why?
We'll talk all night.
All right, guys.
One question, you know.
Last question,
We
please.
have sheriff's departments, we have state police. Would you recommend that we totally get rid of the sheriff's department?
No, but if the state had those enforcement for us, then I would.
They could. They could.
All right, everybody, please listen up. Everybody, please listen up. We have a number of other questions on the table. I was originally told our time ended at 8:30. I've been told we can extend. Is this correct?
But really, you probably need to ask your panel here, because they don't all live in the county, some of them travel here. So we have guests, we have 2 people from the county, 2 people not. So, you know, I know the chaplain has 3 young children at home at school night, so.
I have about 7 more questions.
That they need to answer.
I have about 7 more questions on this sheet. I'd like to get through them. And then,
Did we need to give, first of all, though, I mean, briefly, because I don't want to spend another 20 minutes where anybody shouts questions at Dr. Kessler now. We need to ask him to say something before we continue.
all right.
Well, I think we can let Howard come back in the room.
Okay.
You don't have to go out and
Let's go back to the original.
Can we let the panel be done by 9 so they can get on the road though?
No.
Stop it. Don't do that. All right. So, guys, I want to make sure we address these questions. So we're going to go through these questions one by one, please. And hopefully, if we do it before 9, we can open up a little bit more. In 2012, the legislature changed the rule requiring counties to not approve a permit until the state or federal government approved any required permits. Now the county cannot wait to approve a permit conditional on state federal rules. Shouldn't the county not depend on state fed rules?
Yeah, you're right. In the legislature, the county's procedure was that we would require a DEP permit or a core permit before you applied for your site plan or subdivision. The legislature changed that rule where we can no longer allow that. It does create a difficulty for the county. However, the law does state that they cannot begin development until they have their state or federal permits. So it does create a problem. There is a safeguard at the end, not like we'd like to see. But yeah, we'd much rather see that permit up front. Again, almost every developer has their permit before they even come in for subdivision or site plan review by the county.
It is the feeling of this panel that Wakulla go above and beyond the state requirements. How would you suggest that Wakulla deal with issues that become property takings? Please consider this in respect to recent Supreme Court rulings and the state's method of mitigating wetland damage.
Yeah, if I could take that, a couple points. This is just my opinion. I'm not speaking for the board, but I think subdivisions that were created before the wetlands buffer requirements should probably be exempt. They probably should have been exempt. We see those on a daily basis. It is problematic, and there are lots that are not being developed because of these buffer requirements. And most of these lots have been cleared. A lot of them have bulkheads, so it's very questionable that the buffer is even functioning on those lots, especially when every other lot in the subdivision is developed. So I think that would be one thing that could avoid takings claims. I think the other issue with takings is a real concern that we have that if the county does away with the buffer, the 75-foot buffer, and then there's a citizen's petition placed on the ballot that gets approved that reestablishes the 75-foot buffer, then it does become a taking. It does open up the county to takings challenges because it will technically be a new restriction placed on property, and that's a very real concern.
The commission could stop that from happening, and
Yes.
wait for the vote
Right.
that they want. So that's blame the commission for that, not.
Right.
Yeah, not assigning blame, but it's a very real concern that we have with
There's no
the
concern
takings
if the
change.
commission waits and lets us have the vote.
The commission could head off that danger, that threat.
That's totally on the
Has
commission.
total power to do that, right? Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to keep moving on. Somebody wrote bottom line. if the buffer language is taken out of the, and I apologize if some of this is redundant. If the buffer language is taken out of the comp plan, and then that language is taken out of the ordinance, will a landowner be able to do something that was not permitted before?
Yes, I mean, it will allow development within the 75-foot buffer. The state does have some restrictions on your impacts to wetlands, but they don't have a set 75-foot buffer that the county has in place currently.
If the state now offers, I think this is governs isolated wetlands, what are the buffers for the isolated wetlands?
The county currently requires a straight 75 feet.
The state, I mean, I can answer, you want me to recap again? I know we talked about it earlier. It's a state component on the buffer.
How many feet?
How many feet?
Minimum of 15, average of 25 for secondary and cumulative impacts. That is what our rule requires.
The language actually says that if you provide a buffer of 15 with an average of 25 feet, then you are presumed not to have any adverse secondary impacts. That's if you provide it.
Correct.
If you don't provide it, then you can either demonstrate you have no adverse secondary impacts, propose a different size buffer, smaller or larger, or propose mitigation to offset those adverse impacts. There is no required buffer at the state level. It's an option.
Say that again, please.
Yes.
No required buffer in the state rules. There is an option to use it to get an out from adverse secondary impacts. There are three other options: a different size buffer, mitigation, or demonstrate that you have no adverse secondary impacts.
Yeah, but if you could show that, it's zero buffer.
Correct.
Thank you. We clarified that.
I can show you the exact rule language if you want.
So I can ask a question that's not going to come in front of a vote for me an hour. So I'm not going to break the law for you. Sorry.
Just bone up on it.
I have to change the tire. Any way you need it. I'm not going to break the law.
Holy cats.
If I'm building a house and I'm in the wetlands and I'm creating an adverse impact, if I'm creating a primary and a secondary impact, you say there's no requirement for a 15 minimum, 25 average. But if I do not address the secondary impact, I do not address the 15 minimum, 25 average, or substitute some other acceptable formula, you're going to deny my permit.
Correct.
You said
If
if
you
you
do
were
all
in
that.
the wetlands. What if he's out of the wetlands?
So I would be required, so you would approve my permit if I maintain the 15 average, 25. So when you say there's no requirement, it just made a difference between approval and denial in that scenario.
Not necessarily. Your scenario was an activity that was in the wetlands.
Or has a secondary impact.
In the
secondary
wetlands. If
impact.
it's in the uplands, if you have an upland activity, then, and you provide the buffer, you're presumed to have no secondary impact.
Correct.
If you're
I
in the
agree with
uplands,
that. And I have said in writing, even in the newspaper, that it can go down to a 0-foot buffer. I said that. I'm not in conflict with this. I clearly said that in
But you
writing.
continue to twist it.
All right, let's move on. For you, Louis. In the 2 years you've been Community Development Director, how many variances have been granted?
Let me see, I did bring those numbers with me. I don't know if any have been
Granted, you said.
granted, yes. We've had several applications.
There have been some granted. Like 14.
Well, how many applications, and of those, how many were granted?
And I apologize, I have terrible memory, so I have to write everything down. And I anticipated the question, but I'm looking for the answer. If you want to move on to the next question.
Well, I'll the last one.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is for everybody. What is a good reason for abolishing Wakulla County's wetlands protection? What is a good reason for abolishing Wakulla County's wetlands protection?
Well, I guess I'll take a stab at that one. Just to, I mean, I think I'm not in favor of, and I haven't heard anyone who's in favor of abolishing wetlands protections. I think we're talking again about the buffers. And there are several reasons that I've heard that why the board is considering it, and I won't speak on behalf of the board, but I guess the biggest issue that I guess that we see on a daily basis is with these lots that were created before the wetlands requirements. You know, in my opinion, they clearly should have been exempt. They're not serving except perhaps minimal protections of wetlands, and they're really inhibiting people's property rights. So I think it's a fairness issue, especially in subdivisions that are large.
But that could have been addressed with the current ordinance and amending just that portion and allowing a variance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
rather than getting rid of the ordinance in its entirety.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I think there are definitely, that is definitely an improvement that could be made to the ordinance.
A workshop.
Having looked at the ordinance, there are portions of it that are clearly more stringent than state law. There's no question about that. There's benefit to retaining those portions. There are portions that may duplicate state law, and I won't go into which ones is which. But to the extent that it duplicates state law, an argument could be made to streamline the ordinance. Clearly, grandfathering of prior platted lots that are substantially developed but don't yet have a house on them is something that should be considered. I, for one, would not advocate, though, ditching the ordinance in its entirety, because there is a benefit to local control over and above the more general statewide regulations that are not designed for the specific situations in Wakulla County.
Okay, guys, all right. So here's what we're going to do. We've got through the majority of these questions, and I know some of you still have questions, especially you in the back, so I want to give you a chance to get there. But we have a few more minutes. I will not allow anybody in this group to be abused. I don't care how you feel, all right? So respect everybody in this room, regardless of their party or their affiliation or whatever you feel that issue is. You know, we're already talking about the wetlands being destroyed. We don't need to destroy one another. It won't happen in this room. I will ask you to leave. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay. You in the back, please.
My question goes to what Mr. Thomas said a few minutes ago about having less regulation and that it's better for us to have less regulation. If we're thinking along that vein, then as taxpayers, are we going to save money by having less people in our planning department? How much can we expect to save if we go along with Mr. Thomas's perspective that it's less regulation is going to be better for us as taxpayers? And I guess that's Mr. Cerna. If you could tell me how many less jobs that we will have in your department and how it will save us money by having less regulation.
Well, I don't think it'll save staff money. We don't really do wetland reviews. We check for possible impacts and then notify the state, and we require that
So it won't save us any money?
Not as far as staff goes. You know, I think, again, I won't speak for the commissioner, but I think he was speaking to redundant regulations, perhaps.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why that would make any difference if it's not going to save us any money as taxpayers. Why would that reason for having no buffers and no orders make a difference to us as taxpayers?
Well, again, I won't speak on behalf of the commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Let's forget about wetlands for a second and everything else. Let's just talk a little bit about democracy. I mean, clearly this is a conflicted situation. There's probably, I believe, there will prove to be a greater majority that want to protect wetlands than people that don't. But that should be up to a referendum. What I have a lot of problems with is this commission is the audacity to sit there and take away our American right to vote. Yes, we put you in office to make decisions, but not decisions that regard our health, our livelihoods, our fisheries, our everything else. Poor men should not sit there and make a high-handed, sweeping decision without the public input. Now, we're going to force our public input down your throats, unfortunately, and I don't want to do that. I want you to be a good American and say, if they have a dispute, let's put it to a vote. This business of, yes, every time we have to go out and get these names on the petitions, we have to go door to door to door to door. It's creating a hostility and an antagonism that I hate seeing in this county.
Amen.
I don't see any reason whatsoever. Ralph, I'm very impressed with you as being a commissioner. You and I have worked together on the sign ordinance and other things. I see how you think. I don't always agree with it. But I think that we should have a right to be in a fair and honest and upward, and if we have a dispute, let it hang out, let people vote on it. But to put us through this hoop, which we will prevail, we will get these signatures, but it will cost, it will bleed every which way. It will create an enmity with the commission and with the planning department and with everything else that I don't want to see. And I think it's bad for this country. And we look around what's going on in the world with the conflict in the Middle East and factions beating each other on the head. This is unnecessary. The amount of buffer land that you're talking about is tiny. It's a few acres here and it's a few acres there. The fines are a few $100s. The variances are just a handful. Why put us through this? If you want to stand out and say, get rid of the wetlands bill, put it to a vote. Make it honest. Let's work together. Stop this business that we can't, you won't put it on a referendum, we're going to have to go through adversarial efforts. Let's try to do something where we can work together. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. I got this lady over